Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. Wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina. Wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu. الملك الحق المبين الذي سهل لعباده إلى مرضاته سبيلا وأوضح لهم الهداية وجعل الرسول عليها دليلا وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله الذي بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة وكشف الله به الغمة ونصح للأمة وجاهد في سبيل الله حق جهاده وتركنا على المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك اللهم صل وسلم على هذا النبي الحبيب محمد وعلى آله وصحابته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فيا عباد الله إني أحبكم في الله وأوصيكم ونفسي أولا بتقوى الله ومن يتق الله يجعل له مخرجا ويرزقه من حيث لا يحتسب. عباد الله إن الله تعالى يقول في محكم كتاب العزيز أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها وإذا حكمتم بين الناس أن تحكموا بالعدل إن الله نعم ما يعظكم به صدق الله العظيم. My dear brothers in Islam, on January 20th, 2011, last month, there was a Toronto Star article about a largest Islamic organization in Canada mishandling at least $600,000 of money they received as donations. When this message came out, there was huge chaos and also turmoil in the Muslim community. There were people who started to point fingers at the others. Honestly, there were some groups who were rejoicing this news. There were people who thought this is the media is trying to work against us, a conspiracy theory. There are people who also told that this is sensationalization because that Toronto Star newspaper has no business. So to create this kind of buzz, they prepared this news. Some, of course, angered and some were disappointed. But we, as a Muslim community, we have to look into these things much seriously than just an individual basis. Because when something like this happens, it is our community. As a minority Muslim in this country, we have to face as a community. You can remember 9/11 happened. Nobody among us was involved. But still, we are defending as if we were the perpetrators. It is us versus them. That's what happens. When something is done representing the Muslim community, although there was no evidence it was done, but still we are defending 9/11. We have become the perpetrators. Or it's just two groups. Here, when something like this happened to a largest Muslim organization, one of my colleagues, he said that this is the last thing that should happen to a Muslim organization, Muslim community. Now, I'm not going to look into this issue from who is correct or who is wrong, and which group is correct or which group is not correct. But rather, I'm trying to reduce some lessons we can learn from that. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Al-Kayyisu man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da. The most smart person is the one who always evaluates himself and try to work for the future. Try to avoid these kind of things in the future. You will try to put all the measures against this, against falling into the same trap. And not only the news article, I read the whole report. The audit report of that Islamic organization, which was available in the net. I read the whole report. Subhanallah, after reading the whole report, auditor's report, I found out it's not only about this money. There are so many other issues that were prevalent in that report. Like the admin mismanagement, validation of expenditures, lack of budget control, HR management issues, process management issues, and purchasing items whenever they want, without any budget approval by the board or by the management. Use of personal credit cards for company expenses. And there's no job descriptions, no performance evaluations, and also there are some employees who are underutilized. My dear brothers in Islam, when I read these things, it is very common in almost all the Islamic organizations. I have lived in 3 countries. I have worked ever since I graduated only in Islamic organizations. These are very common. But my surprise is that it happens in Canada. Because in Canada, the charitable rules are very strict. CRA has put down very strict rules and regulations. So we have a perfect system to work. But still, if things are happening like this, something wrong. So here, whenever you go to these kind of organizations, we always hear the 3 words. They are dedicated employees. They are very committed. They have taqwa. This is a trust. So they are above the law. Above the law because they have taqwa. They have commitment, they have dedication, so they are above the law. Who can run this organization like him? So they are above the law. He has been giving his time and effort, and he's sacrificing his entire life, his family, his time, everything for this organization, so he's above the law. My dear brothers in Islam, inshallah in this khutbah, I'm going to look into 2 recommendations to the masjids and organizations who are running Islamic affairs. And 2 other recommendations to us as individuals. Not just recommendations, these are responsibilities. Why? Because the Quran says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ أَن تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ نِعِمَّ مَا يَعِظُكُم بِهِ. Allah says that render back the trust you have with the people to its due people. The trust. Uphold the trust. The trust people have in you. And inna Allah ni'amma ya'adukum bi, Allah is instructing you to show excellence in everything you do. Excellence in every single thing you do. The first responsibility of Islamic organization is corporate social responsibility. Now this is the corporate social responsibility, CSR, is a corporate term which is very common in the West, and now even in the East, in our countries also, they are catching up with this terminology. What is corporate social responsibility? Commitment to conduct its business in an economically, socially and environmentally sustainable way while balancing the interest of the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? People who pray in the masjid, who come for services, the donors, and whoever are connected to the masjid or the Islamic organization, they are the stakeholders. So we have to balance out their interest. This is corporate social responsibility. This is, in fact, for corporation which doesn't have any values, is only profit making. When it comes to non-profit, masjids and Islamic organizations are not making profits. But here, they have to have high degree of social responsibility. Now, what happened with this Islamic organization to avoid such kind of thing? What we can do is, what Islamic organizations and masjids can do is, the first thing is that to have an auditing process. Regular auditing. Sometimes I hear from people, we have less small funding budget. If you hire an auditor, he will charge so much money, we cannot afford that. But what happens is that when you leave out this auditing process for 10 or 15 years, finally, when something is done, the embezzlement, the mismanagement, because of mismanagement, you have lost much more than you would have paid for this auditor. So here we have to be very smart. And the second is that any masjid, I haven't seen a complaint and feedback process. People who come to the masjid or the organization, when they have some kind of complaints, they cannot express that. There should be a suggestion box, a complaint box, to see what's, and then the Islamic organization should have a process, how we are going to deal with that. Not just picking up the phone to that person and say, why didn't you leave the name and you came there. This is not the process. The process has some steps, how it evolves. And the third one is documentation. This is very rare in Islamic organizations. If you go to any company, any charitable activity, any charitable organization, any non-profit, everything is written down. Everything is written down. They have policies, they have procedures. They have manuals for everything, for an HR, how to hire people, how to fire people. Here, one day you'll see an employee has been hired, the next day he's been fired. It happens very often. It should not happen like this. There should be a process, the manual. There are people, masjids should look into this one, document everything. And also when you have all these things documented, what happens is that we are becoming independent. We are not dependent on one single person.